One of Bill Hammer's last students, who is an emeritus professor from UCLA. Normally you sort of say something about people when you're introducing them, but this is sort of a different type of talk. I don't want to give Maddalena's talk, so I let her talk about her life. But what is really interesting about our PhD students is they go on and have varied careers. And Maddalena's path, I'll share a little of it, involved being a journalist and being a biologist, and then putting the two together and being a popularizer of science and an active biologist. And runs the LA Dolphin Project as part of the Ocean Conservation Society, which is a nonprofit which she directs in Los Angeles. And it's really neat to see all these pieces of a career coming together. And what she's going to talk about today is her second book, Dolphin Confidential: Confessions of a Field Biologist. Big cat.
Thanks so much, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay. Now maybe we'll just do it here. Can everybody hear me okay? Sure. As Dan mentioned, this is really a different type of talk from what you usually hear at UCLA because it's about my book. So you might be wondering what sort of juicy thing that field biology. I think everybody can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you might be wondering what kind of juicy thing a field biologist has to confess, considering that most of the time we are either out at sea or sitting behind a desk analyzing data. And you may also wonder what would be so confidential about dogs, considering how little we know about their life. From a boat, that's where I usually conduct my study, you can get only a glimpse of their existence. So why confessions of a field biologist? In the book I talk about my life with dolphins, whales, sea turtles, and other remarkable creatures, but I also talk about my personal life as a woman, as a scientist. Growing up in Italy, my country, as a woman that wanted to study large mammals in the wild, wasn't always easy or popular for that matter. When I grew up, a woman's place was more in the kitchen than outside in the wilderness to study large mammals. So the book opened a window into my personal thoughts, my successes, my frustration. And my hope is that by telling my story, I may involve others, or maybe involve more other people in the protection of the ocean. And what is really confidential about dolphins are the many aspects of their personal lives that I was lucky enough to witness firsthand, which goes to show you that if you spend thousands of hours at sea, sooner or later you're going to learn something. And what I've learned, above all, are the remarkable similarities that these animals have shared with our own species, why caging them really means taking away the way of life, and why we must protect them. Now I'm going to tell you how I started on this journey, along with a few stories here and there from the book, without, of course, revealing you too much. If not, you won't be interested in reading my book, and I will lose my chance of becoming a best-selling author, which I probably already lost. So let's start from the beginning. As you can see, I've always been fascinated with animals. This was me happy as a clam with my first stuffed dog. And this is me a few years later. Some kids love dolls, and I like to carry around my cat. During my childhood, I spent many summers with my family camped out in this remote site in Sardinia. And it was here that my first love affair with nature first began. In Sardinia, I explored the small creature in the sand, I snorkeled in a sea full of life, I ventured inland among wild horses. And my parents always let me roam free. They were never obsessed about safety. They figured that if I got pinched by a crab, next time I would be more careful. And I did, and I was. So basically, learn from my own experiences. I think these are really good life lessons that many kids today are missing. And that's what got me close to nature since an early age. And if it had been up to me, I would stay in this natural paradise. But that was only summertime. Instead, I grew up in a succession of Italian cities due to the itinerant nature always a place to explore nature in the hill nearby or in my mom's garden. In the style of early ethologists, I have this little field book where I would write notes on everything I observed, from a lizard eating on a caterpillar in my mom's garden, or the habit of a hamster I kept in a terrarium, or the sleeping habit of my dog Yogi here with me in the picture. And I spend hours every day in company of animals. Later on, I continue to conduct my naive experiment of animal, mostly to offset what's going on in school in Italy, where animals, for the most part, were seen through the dissected bodies of frogs. Even being a student of natural science at the University of Padua didn't turn out to be what I had imagined. The lectures were far from being enticing, and I felt really suffocated in the cement box of my university. I guess I was ready for the kind of pre-programmed life that was unfolding before me, but everything seems pulling me in that direction, what my friends and boyfriend were doing, the provincial Italian mentality. So I realized early on that I needed to do something before I had to throw myself under a train, and I began looking for a stronger bond with nature. In my search to find this stronger bond, I began traveling all over Europe to study all sorts of creatures, from bats to snakes and pigeons, mostly as volunteers. When I turned 19, I also started working as a photojournalist for a travel bicycle magazine. And this part-time job gave me the opportunity to pay for my school expenses, but also live the life of a city dweller for a time. So when I wasn't taking mandatory courses at the university, I was either traveling on a bike or filling up my Fiat 500 with camping gear to be somewhere out in the woods. And here I am on my bike with a radio, eating cookies, studying migratory pigeons in Sardinia. Dolphins haven't yet entered my life. Studying the moving behavior of a species of lizard present in a natural reserve in Tuscany sounded like an okay compromise between the strict requirement of my university and my total lack of money. Even though this reserve wasn't the wildest place one can ever imagine, and these tiny roaming reptiles weren't the large mammal I was hoping to study, I was out in nature studying animals, as I always wanted. The leap from bigger lizards, here I'm cuddling an iguana, and then to sea turtles and dolphins came naturally. At that time, my brother Giovanni was studying marine mammals with a research institute set up to conduct research with paying eco-volunteers. The institute was looking for somebody interested in conducting the first sea turtle and conservation project in a remote reserve of the Yucatan Peninsula. Somehow, studying reptiles under of a completely different taxonomic order, and my willingness to stay in a remote site for a month at a time got me the job. And I didn't let the fact that I spoke not Spanish at the time and the job paid next to nothing get in my way. So began my 6-year project in the isolated natural reserve of the Yucatan Peninsula, where I was the principal investigator. During the day, I gave lecture to the eco-volunteers and I explored the surroundings, and night research for sea turtle. I slept under the stars and lived for months at a time, far away from civilization. It was wonderful. At Palmara, the research station was almost not existent. There was a fisherman's shack, these are the fisherman's children, a couple of old buildings, a couple of trees, all around the impenetrable mangrove forest. There were highly neurotoxic coral snakes, scorpions, tarantula, and other spiders of all kinds. And then there were also other unexpected dangers, like drug smugglers. They arrived by boat at night on the same shore where we are conducting sea turtle research. Here is one of my volunteers prepping sign to detect the site of sea turtles where they nest. And in the background, you can see the military patrol looking for drug smugglers. In reality, they came only once to see if we were okay. Here, from May to August, Axfield and other species of sea turtle came ashore to lay their eggs. We used to walk up to 8 miles every night just to find them. These turtles are amazing in their ability to find the same shore where they were hatched from hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles away. And it really takes your breath away to see this ancient-looking reptile to come ashore and find the perfect spot where they can lay their 150 plus ping pong both sides little eggs. And we used to wait until the female laid their eggs before we collect data. I know it may seem intrusive to you, but that was really the best time to collect information. Now I still wonder if the baby sea turtle will ever go back to the shore where they were born, threatened by pollution, coastal development, the shell trade. These animals are really just one step away from extinction. One morning, in my second year at Palmar, I was sitting alone on the beach and I saw dolphins coming in my direction. Immediately, I recognized Superhero, a botanist dolphins I identified here the year before. But busy as I was with sea turtle research and eco-volunteers, I had little time to think about dolphin research. But the presence of a Superhero and his companions was hard to ignore, so I started thinking about some way that how I could introduce dolphin research in my Yucatan project. And as I wrote in my book, without either of us knowing it, the Superhero and I have opened my first chapter of my life with dolphins. And it was easy for me to get pointers on how to study dolphins from my brother Joe. On Dolphin Matter, Joe knew far more than I did. From our family and friends, he was always the dolphin expert, and then down the evolutionary scale was me, the reptile enthusiast. In the summer that followed, I began my first rudimentary study on dolphins, first from the shore of Palmar, then from pandas like this one, where I got rides on the boat to study dolphins in exchange of beer for the fishermen, and then from this pier here in the Biosphere Reserve of Rio Lagatos, also in Yucatan. And I moved the research project here 3 years after, because between drug smuggler and poisonous snakes, the life in the other reserve was getting a little bit too risky for my eco-volunteers. Research was going well, but there were still problems that needed to be addressed. For instance, the kid Rio Lagatos, the little town where we were staying, used to play war game using sea turtle eggs as ammunition. And I decided to see what I could do to teach them something about conservation. And that was probably the first time that I started thinking the pace of the exploitation of this animal was really outpacing the benefit to do just pure research. Then, as a result of the dolphin study, rudimentary dolphin study I was doing there, I got a call from my director back in Milan when I was still in Mexico. And he asked me if I was interested to be the principal investigator for the first marine mammal project in the water of Greece, just upon my return from Mexico. Well, you can probably imagine what I answered. So there I was on my way down to the southern Italian port of Otranto, where the research vessel, the Maddalena, and his captain were waiting for me to leave for Greece. I had experience with volunteers, sea turtle, a little bit with the dolphins of the Yucatan Peninsula, but what did I really know about the dolphins of the Greek water? I was nervous. And to make things even more intimidating, it was the fact that I'd been on a research sailboat only once. And guess what? I got seasick as a dog. So my romantic idea to be out at sea studying the dolphins suddenly clashed with the reality to be green and nauseous. So I was terrified by the coming months at sea. But things seem to find a way to resolve themselves. I didn't get seasick, and I managed to learn enough to conduct what turned out to be a reasonable, good project. There were, of course, some rough spots, like the dramatic mood swing of our lunatic captain. They insisted to eat pasta carbonara every single day at sea, which I love, being Italian at all, but not every single day. And so began the great experience of being face-to-face with dolphins in the Ionian Sea. And I would like to read you a little paragraph from my book. As we paralleled the school, the dolphins approached the boat to ride our bow wave. A kind of magic is beginning, and Nella, Sarah, and I scrambled into the net suspended below the Maddalena bowsprit to be closer to it. Here we hang, with our heads upside down, just an arm's length from the water. The dolphins so near to us that we can almost touch their fluid bodies. One animal surfaces, grazing our fingertips, and a shiver ran down my spine. We are not speaking anymore, and it's clear all three of us are feeling the same intensity. From our perch, we can clearly see the individual detail of their painted bodies as they move effortlessly and gracefully through their soiled blue water. For the first time, I can see the shape of their eyes under what seems their heavy black makeup. There is something there that I have not seen in my work with other animals, a kind of knowing or consciousness. It feels like they are as aware of us as we are of them. Time seems stopped. After my experience in Greece, I began doing research in the Ligurian Sea, tracking fin whales like this one, using hydrophone to listen to their conversation late into the night. Each species of whale has unique vocalization, and fin whales usually produce loud pulses at a frequency of about 20 hertz. This is just below our human audible threshold. These guys with blue whales also speak at one of the lowest frequencies known in the animal world. And this research opened my eyes, but especially my ears, to a world where sounds travel almost 5 times faster than it does on land, where there is a virtual cacophony of sound. A sound that these animals use to communicate with others, to find food. These sounds that they use to survive in a challenging three-dimensional environment. Being a marine biologist and traveling around the world to study dolphins and whales was great. It really didn't help me to pay my bills. And I was now living in Milan, working part-time as a journalist. Every time I went to sea, I knew that was where I was meant to be. And here is a little personal confession for you, seeing that the book is called Confession of a Biologist. In Milan, I met Charlie, an Hollywood native, friend of a marine biologist friend of mine. Charlie was a sailor, and when living in Italy, was helping with the work, the marine mammal work with the Maddalena. We became friends, and then, well, something more than just friends. A couple of years later, I moved from Italy to Los Angeles to be with Charlie. Sailing on his boat in the Pacific, I found myself an ocean apart, 1,000 miles away from my family, my friends, and my country. They seemed so natural, they had to be the right choice. And before leaving, like a good Italian emigrant actually, a good Italian emigrant, I filled up my luggage with prosciutto, wine, and other things. I miss my country a tiny bit less. And I still doing that. I kept my project in Yucatan, some freelance journalist work from Italy, but I also started spending more and more time in the Los Angeles waters. I was astonished by the diversity of marine mammals that one can find here. And I was even more amazed to discover that nobody really studied dolphins and whales in the Santa Monica Bay. This was an enigma to me, but I was captivated by the opportunity to be a sort of research pioneer here. That was the beginning of what became one of the longest marine mammal studies along the west coast of the United States in my everyday life in company of dolphins. Among the many amazing encounters with dolphins and whales of California, I will always remember my first encounter with a blue whale at the beginning of my research here. I remember being in a 20-foot powerboat in a really rough day at sea, and these whales, this blue whale, come up just next to my boat, and I remember the blowhole being as big as my caddy cabin. I felt the size of a toothpick. Just imagine that a small child could walk on the arteries of this animal, and my Mini Cooper is as big as their heart. They're pretty impressive. I managed to learn English, enough to get accepted for a PhD at UCLA, I guess. Although I have my strong Italian accent. And the title of my dissertation was to be Ecology of Marine Mammals in the Santa Monica Bay, obviously. My focus was on the coastal bottlenose dolphins, or what I call my metropolitan dolphins, such as the one with the sleepy eye that you see here. But don't be fooled by the sleepy eyes of these animals, because dolphins live only with half of their brain. The other half always stay awake, so they avoid drowning. At the beginning, my data collection drew from my past work, but it became more and more complex as the month passed by, and I needed a research team, what I dubbed the Los Angeles Dolphin Project Team, or LDP, not to confuse with the LFPD. And many of my research assistants became great friends, which yet another advantage in this line of work. Spending increasingly more time in the Los Angeles water, I started observing extraordinary things that probably, as many of you know, happen when you least expect them. And talking about extraordinary things, I want to tell you a little story that happened, and they are described in the book, that happened to me at the beginning of my research here. One day we were following, with my research team, we were following bottlenose dolphins along shore, as we do on a regular basis. And bottlenose dolphins usually move less than 300 feet from shore, and they stop here and there to feed in circle. But that day, one individual in a school of these dolphins suddenly moved offshore, and the rest of the group followed him. This was kind of unusual for these bottlenose dolphins, and so I decided to follow them as well. We were about 3 miles offshore, 3 miles off Malibu, when the group of dolphins stopped and formed a circle around a dark object. We moved closer with the boat, and I noticed the seemingly lifeless body of a girl. So we moved closer even more, and I saw that this girl was really hypothermic, and she lifted her head as a plea for help. And she was completely dressed, which was kind of unusual. And we called the lifeguard, and the lifeguard told us not to do anything, just to wait for them. And my feeling was that if we didn't do anything, that girl could have died. So we ignored the lifeguard advice, and we took this girl aboard. We took her clothes off and tried to make her warm. And I noticed she was probably about 18. Foreign, we didn't seem to be able to communicate with her. And I also noticed she had a little plastic bag attached to her neck. I called the lifeguard, they met us halfway, and we gave the girl to them. And then we went to the Marina del Rey Emergency Hospital to see how she was doing. The doctor came out, he thanked us for our quick action. He told us that she was alive, she was from Germany, 18 years old. And as a letter that was found in this bag, she was committing suicide. Busy as we were trying to save the girl, we completely forgot about the dolphins. What might they have done if we didn't get there? Would they have tried to save her? You know, there are all these stories, all these accounts of dolphins saving humans, even by fending off sharks, pulling bodies to the surface. Many scientists think dolphins, in fact, do not save humans because there is not enough scientific evidence. But the day I witnessed a group of dolphins do something completely unusual from what I usually observe, and they brought us to save that girl. So is that coincidence? It's still a question I ask myself today. Not too long after that experience at sea, Charlie and I decided to found Ocean Conservation Society, a non-profit with the mission to conduct research and educational program for the protection of the ocean. Our decision was kind of daunting because it meant that our collective income was suddenly stopped as Charlie left his regular job and I started working as a journalist. But we decided to move ahead anyway. You live only once, right? OCS was the beginning of a new adventure and the research became even more complex, which meant that now we had many pelican cases to go out at sea. We had multiple cameras, video cameras, now we have GoPro, computers, underwater hydrophone, plankton nets, and much more. So things changed a lot from when I first started collecting data just with a pen and a piece of paper. But I always try to keep in mind what I really want to observe and not to lose my sense of wonder and curiosity about the things I'm observing. In the waters of Southern California, I had the fortune to have many encounters with marine mammals and learn more about their complex lives. For instance, following and videotaping sea lions and dolphins for many years, I learned that sea lions actually take advantage of the superior ability of dolphins to echolocate food and then use the same foraging ground. In this image you can see a sea lion following a school of dolphins, and here is a sea lion. This is something that they do all the time, coming out of the water as a periscope to look where the dolphins are going. I learned how to see the linkages that exist among different species and their collective habitat, and I expanded my research to include other creatures, for instance seabirds, and here is one of my research assistants collecting data with the PDA. Analyzing and matching tens of thousands of images of photo-identified individuals, dolphins, you can see the fins on the left there, they have notches on the dorsal fin, and they work as a human fingerprint that can tell us the identity of almost every individual in a school. So matching all these images, I learned more about the local population of bottlenose dolphins. For instance, I found that inshore population of bottlenose dolphins, the one that move 300 feet from shore, stay here for a period of time using the Santa Monica Bay as a foraging ground. Unfortunately, often feeding near stormwater runoff areas, and then move up and down the coast. And now we have a huge collaborative study with researchers from Mexico to Oregon to see the movement of this animal. I learned how differently inshore and offshore population of bottlenose dolphin behave, with the offshore population being way more social and acrobatic, as you can see here, than the inshore. But I also discovered, contrary to popular knowledge, that these two populations actually overlap partially. I discovered the bottlenose dolphins in Santa Monica Bay suffer skin diseases and physical deformities, and this was the first study of this kind on the West Coast. The presence of these skin diseases and physical deformity is related to environmental factors like sea temperature and salinity, but also due to human pollutants. So this should concern us because it has potential implications. Some of these research projects are still going on, and every year I add more study to my list. But my research has taken a more and more conservation-oriented approach because I really believe that I don't have the luxury anymore to do just research without keeping conservation in mind. What we scientists are going to study if the haspil turtle will never go back to those shores where they're hatched, of the 200-300 North Atlantic rice whale left, called the right whale because they were right whale to kill, are facing extinction because of ship collision and entanglement. I think it's a really good question to ask ourselves. But for now, for every hour my research team and I spend with dolphins, as all you know, it's the same thing for dolphin research, we spend at least 5 times back in the lab analyzing data. And if any of the students here are interested in pursuing dolphin research in the future, the rewards of being a dolphin biologist are immense, but you really need to have the passion and dedication for this kind of work, and it can be a lot of work. So to know more about the dolphins, like these Dall's porpoise that we saw in the bay, or like this baby sea turtle, baby harbor seal, baby harbor seal that once tried to jump in our boat, you really need to read my book. But now I'd like to take a moment to tell you some of the things that I learned from dolphins and why we must protect them. I learned about the simplicity of life. When you are at sea looking at this animal, you really feel like little is needed to be okay. Something that I have noticed time and time again is how nature, dolphin, and the ocean really can change people. And I saw it happen with my volunteers in Yucatan. I see it happen here, just a few miles off the huge metropolis of Los Angeles. I think most of us has this need to reconnect with nature, but we are so busy with our everyday life that often we don't remember it. One of the things that I learned early on is that dolphins were not all the same. They were not just the object of my study. They were really single individuals, and not just for their notches and their scar, but also for their personality and their emotion. And people often ask me if dolphins have emotion. And the short answer is yes. If you spend as much time as I did studying this animal, you can negate that this animal had an emotion. If you see a mother taking care of her calf, or in the 2 pictures in the top, that's a mother grieving for the loss of her calf. This mother pulled the body of this calf toward the surface for 3 days in a row, trying to make him breathe. And the other dolphins, the companion, came over and over again, trying to get it away, and she stayed with her calf. So all of this is very compelling. I learned to recognize dolphin as intelligent creature. It is true that intelligence, like emotion, is very difficult to define, but looking at the animal world, almost any creature can be considered intelligent, right? I can make a good case for my dog Burbeck here in the picture. He's moving the instrument to the boat, and it was a great enviro dog, able to deflate all the balloons that we found, and we're still collecting after season our survey. But as I explained in my first book, Beautiful Minds, The Parallel Lives of Great Apes and Dolphins, only in a few species, especially in dolphins, great apes, and humans, you see these brain complexities, this ecological complexity, and this complexity in their social behavior so strictly linked together. And if you look at the dolphin's ability to communicate and transfer information, to remember and imitate, to develop strong bonds and care for their young, you realize how close they are not only to great apes, but also to us. Probably more than we like to think or even to admit. Sometimes I follow dolphins and whales for 8 and 9 hours in a day, and I see how fluid their societies are. I see how these animals get together and break apart. And at the same time, I think about aging them and all these animals they are in captivity. What can be worse than that? So the natural world around me has changed since my childhood, and for sure I have to change with it. Traveling around the world, studying dolphins and whales, I witnessed firsthand the dramatic change to our environment. For the first time in history, dolphin species are disappearing during our lifetime due to our human impact. I've seen abnormal cauliflowers growth on the bottlenose dolphin in the Indian River Lagoon in Florida, and physical deformity on this animal, like these tumors, here and in the Mediterranean. I used to see huge lobster when I was a child in Sardinia. Now they're half the size and they're disappearing. 90% of the predatory fish is gone. And I'm sad when I think the world I grew up in is changing to such a degree that some of the experience I had in nature may become just a memory. If we don't do something soon, some of these magnificent creatures may not be there much longer. But besides what the dolphin in this cartoon may think, I have a profound trust in our inherent ability to change and be better human. And I think it's this trust that keeps me going. I've been in company with dolphins, whales, and other marine mammals for over 20 years, observing their behavior, learning from them. They're in my life, they're often even in my dream. But I feel that there is still so much to know, and at the same time, I grow increasingly worried about their future. Real change must happen to protect this animal. But what changes? We need effective ocean protection, and to get that, we need to see ourselves as part of a grand natural system. And education, especially environmental education, can help us to attain that goal. Environmentalist is not an option like choosing one's religion or political affiliation. My husband Charlie and Dan Bluestreet wrote in their book The Failure of Environmental Education. Dan and Charlie, like me, grew up with a passion for nature that changed later in life into a commitment to protect our vanishing wilderness. And I don't want to, I can just move on. I don't want to seem simplistic. You need more than just, education and passion. We need real conservation action. We need action. We need all of us working together. I think that all of us have a say in the future of this animal, and exercising the say is our last chance to protect this animal, and we should try seriously to do something. Thank you.
Questions?
It's not a question, it fits in this morning. I was at the beach with dolphins, and I noticed, the surfers are out there and they were petting them. So I went up to this one young man who was about 20. He said he was from Scotland. He was terrified of the ocean. He had never been on a surfboard. He took this paddleboard. It was like their shutters right out straight, and he petted it. It was like this moment, and I just thought it was just it's just a miraculous wonder of nature to see them every day.
And it's actually very unusual he was able to pet, because we are conducting a study right now looking at how close dolphins go to surfers and paddleboarders. And they go usually 3 meters from them, and then 9 feet, and then they usually dive. That's the most common behavior that we see in the present. So that was pretty unusual. Other questions? Yes?
So with ocean acidification, you could have a pretty sharp decrease in the amount of primary production happening in the have people done any modeling to show sort of what potential trophic cascades are through these phytoplankton communities up to top predators like the marine mammals that you've been studying, to see how the existing populations being depleted as they are might be impacted by this decreased primary production associated with ocean acidification?
Yes, there are studies. There are no studies for these areas, and not studies that I know for Southern California in general. But there are more studies coming out. There's I can send you one that I found recently. So I think there is being investigated more and more often in recent years. Yes?
Not really a question. Well, maybe I can turn it into a question. I think I heard last week, I think it was on the radio, I don't remember when, with all things considered, which one time, it was Steve Palumbi talking about the wonderful rebound of large mammals, seabirds off the coast of Monterey, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Because they've enlarged the reserves there. So there's some potential, or is that why? I mean, it's some potential for hope that if we could enlarge these marine reserves, we could see some significant population increase?
Well, there's something that's happening here too. You know, there are all these people that come to us and say, oh, there are all these marine mammals in the Santa Monica Bay, so we are doing so well, and the water is so clean because there are blue whales and gray whales. And Monterey is happening the same thing, and the reason is why is that you have all that food in the Monterey area and Santa Monica Bay. They have similar bathymetric features with submarine canyons and upwellings, so they're bringing fish, bringing creek, and everything. There's been very unusual for the last few years, but that doesn't mean that these animals are doing better. It means they are frequenting different areas due to food presence. So I will be very careful and to say, and I wrote an article recently about this, because that's what everybody believes. So we don't, why are you even worried about these animals? They are doing great, they are here. And actually, what's happening in the Mediterranean is that sometimes you see more dolphins in more polluted area because they found more fish in polluted area. So it's kind of counterintuitive. So I think we still have the same problem that we had before. Actually, for some species like blue whales, they are here, but we have 2,000 individuals left. So there are not so many. Are still a critically endangered species, even if we see 30 individuals at once off the beach.
What about the skin lesion work you've been doing and the skin stuff? Can you share some of those results?
Yeah, it's something that at the beginning I didn't pay any attention, and then looking more and more at the body, the picture I have of the body of this individual, I see that the skin lesion and tumors are becoming more and more frequent. And they vary a lot. For instance, if we compare the same animals in Santa Monica Bay with Monterey and with San Diego, you see different skin lesions in the same individual as they go in different areas. For instance, in Monterey, some of these lesions are related only to diatoms. So there are more diatoms in Monterey, so you see this yellow lesion more there, and they disappear when they come here. But many of these lesions are also due to viruses and a lot of problems that we also have. They also affect our health, and I see more tumors. So now we are trying to correlate the presence of the skin lesion with pollutants that are in the body of this animal and make some correlation. And we are now collecting biopsy samples. That's how you need to collect the blood of this animal and look at contaminants. But considering that many of these animals are moving along shore, there are other researchers that are collecting biopsy, for instance, in San Diego, so we have exactly the same individual here, so we will know also the results. And this is a research that is still going on. We're trying to see how bad these skin lesions are getting, how long they stay on the body of these animals, if they tend to disappear, or how they affect their health.
You may have touched on it, but how do you do census work and follow operations?
Well, we don't do a lot of work on migratory species. We usually, for whales, they are the migratory animals that are here, like gray whales, or humpbaits. We take photographs of either their body or their tails, depending on the species, and then we exchange the data with other researchers along the entire west coast up to Alaska. So there is a big research project going on where all researchers give data to them. So we don't. I mostly all the work we're conducting in whales, I collaborate with other scientists. Any other question?
As a young woman in Italy, were you encouraged to pursue this career in biology?
No.
No.
Quite
So
the
don't you
opposite.
think
My university, when I said I wanted to study dolphins, they thought I was completely crazy. a lizard. The only reason why I could conduct a project on lizard was because I studied all the plants that were in the reserve in Tuscany that I told you about. So my research thesis for my bachelor was this herbarium. They had all the plants in the reserve, and the side research was what the behavior, the homing range behavior of this lizard. If not, I was not allowed to present a behavioral thesis because wasn't nobody could do that at that time. That's how third world country.
So you must pinch yourself every time and think that you've made a career out of something that you're completely passionate about and in nature all the time.
Yeah, it's not the easiest career. No, it's not the easiest career one can choose.
Yeah, doing it alone creates its own challenges. Well, let's thank Maddalena one more time.